I even saw him this morning and didn't think to bump him about it.
Tristan?
Yeah.
He texted me, I texted him.
Oh, okay.
Block, and he texted me back and he said, I'll see you tonight.
Oh, there you go.
Really, that didn't mean at the bar.
Is volleyball league over? Ready? Here we go. I'd like to bring the September 26th special meeting of the North Platte Planning Commission to order. Start by taking roll.
Davies.
Here.
Winder. Matthews. Here. Bain.
Here.
Weber. Fudge.
Here.
Jett.
Here.
Forbes. And Worrell. Quorum is present.
There is a current copy of the open meetings laws for the state of Nebraska on the wall. Please note that Mr. Winder is now present.
Sorry, Chair Fudge.
Can you call him again? Then we can just put him present.
Item number 2 on the agenda, approve the minutes of the special meeting held back on August 30, 2022. You all should have gotten a copy of those minutes in your email.
I would move to approve the minutes.
Second?
Moved by Winder, seconded by Jett to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Well, said August 30th.
September 12th, I forgot that, we made
sorry.
new ones, you must have brought that.
Mine says September 12th.
Yeah.
The new ones say September 12th.
This is what I get for printing off the agenda
Glad you brought that up.
at work and trying to be efficient.
I move to approve the
I think there's already.
special.
No,
what?
we already did.
You good with that motion?
I'm good
All
with it.
Oh, sweet.
Perfect.
Okay,
So we're voting now.
I'm just so anxious to get one of those.
I know. Well, you'll have chances tonight.
I think you got 7 other chances.
I will vote.
One for yes, 2 for no.
Trying. There we
Hit
go.
the right one.
Sorry, I didn't have my
Sometimes
clicker
you
out.
have to hold it.
Oh, okay.
All right. And the minutes are approved. Okay, we have a whole bunch of this stuff tonight. There's a handful of these public hearings. Items number 3 and 4 on your agenda, we are going to open the public hearing together. So if you've got any interest here in those 2 agenda items, we'll do that here coming up. But I need to read both agenda items before we start here. So, item number 3 is a public hearing on file number AM 22-006, discuss and consider action on an application by S&T LLC for an amendment to the North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Map, amending property located on the corner of Lakeview Boulevard and West Front Street from residential, medium-density, single, duplex, and multifamily to industrial on property described as part of the southeast quarter of Section 36, Township 14 North, Range 31 West of the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska, proposed Lakeview Country Estates Second Subdivision. Item number 4 is also a public hearing. File number Z22005, discuss and consider action on an application by S&T LLC to rezone certain lands from an R1 dwelling district to an I1 light industrial district on property located at the corner of Lakeview and West Front Street, described as the southeast quarter of Section 36, Township 14 North, Range 31 West of the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska, the proposed Lakeview Country Estates Second Subdivision. Judy.
Okay, and as the chairman stated, items 3 and 4 on the agenda do involve the same property. They may be discussed together. They will have to be acted on separately. If item number 3 is not approved, then item number 4 cannot be acted on and will be pulled from the agenda. In order to rezone a property, it is the duty of the Planning Commission to ensure that the rezoning is in conformance with the current comprehensive plan. The request for an amendment has been submitted in item number 3 in conjunction with this rezoning. The applicants are requesting the amendment to allow a change in zoning. A copy of the proposed zone change is attached. On the first item, number 3, you'll see a copy of the proposed amendment. Then you will also see on item number 4's information, a copy of the proposed zone change, along with a copy of the proposed site plan provided by the applicant. And also attached to that, you will see a Form B, talking about what they are going to be placing or propose to be placing on that property. And additionally, the applicant has provided 2 pictures of a very similar type site plan or similar type site that would be what they're looking at doing. A representative of the applicant is in the audience, so if you have any questions, you can ask him, or I would be happy to answer any questions you may have also.
Okay, this is a public hearing. We want your input and encourage you to come up and speak if you'd like to say anything about these 2 items. If you come forward, I'll recognize you. We'll want your name and address. The chair does reserve the right to limit testimony if it gets repetitive and the like. And with that, the public hearing is open. Anybody want to speak on this one? Come on up. Name and address, sir.
My name is Rich Muston, and I live at 4021 Parkland Estates Court.
Thank you.
My property is right across the street from this proposal, and I know what he's trying to do, but we, as citizens of Lincoln County, we have a housing shortage. And why would we take prime housing land and make it industrial? That makes no sense to me, and I don't think it's treating our county fair when we have all these people going to be moving in here, and even District 177 is probably going to bring in over 100 people, and of course we all know about the packing plant. But don't take land away that is prime for housing building. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Does anybody have it, before you leave, sir, I'm sorry, anybody have any questions for Mr. Muston? Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to testify on this one? Come on up.
Tammy Caskey, 3802 Sequoia Drive.
Thank you.
So I have kind of some similar concerns. When I look at it, the city long-term has to grow west and south. So when I look at that, does it make sense to say housing, storage units, housing on the other side? So when I'm just thinking like kind of long-term big picture. So I guess I have a couple of questions on that maybe they can address. But to me, I don't have all the information, so I don't know that I'm actually even speaking correctly. But to me, instead of having that go from front, down Lakeview, if you're really trying to create a buffer for the railroad or whatever kind of situation you've got there, then wouldn't it make more sense to go all along Front Street instead of coming down by that housing unit? I guess is one question that I would have. And then if that does get rezoned to light industrial, what does that open it up for the other things? Again, in his concern of if you're trying to grow housing, which I think we desperately need to grow that way, if that whole area gets rezoned, it's not just a housing unit then that's opened up for. It now opens the floodgates for anything else that industrial wanted to go in there. So again, for me, it's just a question of, as a city, does that make sense long-term to put something kind of right in the middle of what I think would be prime residential areas? So those are my concerns.
Any questions for Tammy? Thank you. Anybody else on this one? Come on up.
Good evening. Thank you. Rob Stefka, Commercial Investment Services, 212 North Dewey. And our company represents both the landowner and the developer. To address both of those issues, I want to review a little bit of what those pictures look like that we have. One of the reasons that we are looking at that corner is the zoning that's required for those are pretty stringent. I-1 is across the street to the north. along West Front Street. We thought by bordering that, most of that land is owned by the railroad to this north and east of this. Privately on the north and west, we have talked with those people, and we're not able to get together for a price that was reasonable. This adjoins that, so we don't think we're spot zoning. I understand, and we want to visit about the importance of that residential area. We plan to coordinate a development there. I hope that it happens, but I think we're close to maybe where some of this fill is going to create a lake or some use of that follows. Of course, when you get into development, things change and expenses change, but one of the goals was maybe to create a lake to put residential around that facility. I think the photos of the facility, if you're familiar with those are really high security. It is fenced all the way around. It is concrete, and it's 24-hour security. It probably would add a great deal to the safety of the neighborhood. We also think that the traffic that will be on that frontage road or along front is to the railroad, 2,300 employees that go down that road back and forth every day. We felt that as that corner develops, or as that land develops, and I agree with both of the people who spoke before, that it'll be residential. But if you think about that corner, as the traffic there, that corner lot for residential is probably going to be the less interesting lot of all that are there. If the corner house on that high a traffic street, that lot's probably going to be the most difficult to sell. If you want your house on Lakeview and West Front, that's quite a high traffic visible area, and depending on where your lot line is, on a lot from that corner is going to have to be probably, and Judy could probably attest to this, minimum somewhere probably at 100 to 150 foot from that corner. It is bounded on the north by a drainage ditch that's going to be there. That ditch won't go away. It's still there. So they have a drainage ditch, an irrigation ditch that's going to be used and continue to be used and will not be vacated and has water in it certain times of the year. That is next door. To me, I would think maybe a different use than residential would be something you might think about there. I think other than that, I would address other things, but I'm sensed that this will be a unique facility. I've often wondered why, and I know one of the questions was, how many storage units do we need in North Platte? My experience has been in the past, I think the only answer that I can tell you is maybe the city of North Platte and the citizens of North Platte have been cheated all these years because we don't have any basement. And with the basements, give you more storage units and more storage availability. But there is a high demand for that, and we manage over 1,000 units. I don't think what we have is probably turning over between August and September and November. I think we may have 5. I think the other ones are full. But they have matured in the marketplace where they are not innocuous, but at least we sense they're a good neighbor. As far as security, there is high security with these. And the rest of the land will be developed residential. And but we were hoping that maybe there could be some features added to that with this in conjunction that would make it a more pliable development for the people. And I'd answer any questions that you would have on that.
Any questions?
I have a question. Will all the storage, and I realize this is a possible proposed use, but will all the storage be units, or will there be some open?
They'll all be enclosed.
Okay. Thank you.
They will be concrete, meet landscaping with underground sprinklers and fenced.
And this is the proposed Lot 1,
Yes, sir.
So it's a 4.9
9.
acres?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Stefka?
So, I mean, you said that residential might be a little bit difficult just being at this corner, but then also the irrigation ditch running there, but you could still, I mean, housing is a possibility in that spot still, right?
It really is, Ms. Worrell, but I think there's no access from that lot onto Front Street because the ditch is there unless you put a culvert in and a road. So there's going to be significantly limited access from residential into that street. We think that's the reason that it would add more traffic to that corner if it were something else as a house or a residence.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
will come back if there's any more. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else would like to testify on this? Name and address, please.
My name is Verdina Clark Muston. I live at 4021 Parkland Estates Court.
Thank you.
We've lived there a little less than 2 years, and during that time, we had a ditch along our property. It was not a problem, and I don't see that it would be a problem for the other property. Recently, it was filled in because they expanded Lakeview itself. And that was the only reason that
The question towards us.
Towards
and
us.
then we'll let him
Okay.
respond.
I want to know how many residential lots would be in the 4.9 acres? How many possible?
Is that your only question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Rob Stefka, Commercial Investment Services, and we've worked together a lot in the past. Sir, I think with that ditch gone, generally, we had a rule of thumb, 3 to 4 per acre. You got to put in the storm sewer, the sanitary sewer, and those utilities and those easements, usually 3 to 4.
So that'd be 20 housing lots were taken out.
Probably more or less, but I'm not sure. When you get into the development, Mr. Miston, and forgive me, I sure don't mean to turn my back on you. I'm not sure how that road would hit, because when you won't be able to get to that corner, that's an enigma, that whole corner's an enigma when you get to development with the sewer and the water and with that drainage ditch. And how far do you, there's people probably much more qualified, or Mr. Jett, than I am on residential. Never sold a house. 40 years, I've never sold.
Thank you, Mr. Stefka.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Come on up.
Tammy Caskey again.
Yeah.
So, Rob, when you're talking about the being not able to put housing on that corner or with that ditch, but it's the exact same across the road, right? Where the housing are already built? I mean, it's got that irrigation ditch going
So
right
you,
behind it.
you'll have to state your questions, and then I'll bring him back
Oh,
up. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
sorry. So one question is, I guess when they're saying that it would be hard to develop anything on that corner, to me, if you literally cross the street, they've already got the exact same housing on the exact same corner there. So I guess that's one question that I would have there. And then the second one comes back to, I guess, when I was up here first, I don't know what all is getting, is it just the 5 acres? Is it that whole area that's getting rezoned industrial? Like how, because I've never gotten to see,
I can tell you,
Really
the
where?
proposal in front of us for rezoning is the 5 acres,
4.99.
4.99.
okay, so it leaves all the rest, it doesn't
Correct.
include, so there
Doesn't
could be
touch
no
anything else.
future.
Yeah.
If there were anything other than that, than what's being proposed now, they'd have to come back here and do this again.
Okay,
Because all they're asking about right now is that corner.
okay.
Does that answer that question?
That answers that
Clarify,
question.
Is part 4 the rest of it?
Part 4.
Item,
Oh,
agenda item
no, no.
4?
That's the so agenda item number 3 is the amendment to the comprehensive plan, which you have to do in order to rezone.
Okay.
Item number 4 is just the 4 acres that we're talking about rezoning. And then item number 5 is the subdivision that goes along with that.
Which is the rest of that parcel.
Well, it's lot 1, it's creating this lot.
It's creating the lot.
Okay.
So all three of these agenda items are about one little hunk of space.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, could you also ask Mr. Stefka to address if they considered going along Front Street
sure.
instead of going down
Okay.
Lakeview?
Mr. Stefka, if you would, please. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you, Rob Stepka, Commercial Investment Services. That, two issues, and I'm gonna address that ditch. That was maintained a little ways. What was developed, we managed all the property to the south. We kept that ditch open so that we could continue to irrigate that area north of Eisenhower School. And when the city started to develop this, they approached us and we agreed to give up our water rights. The reason that ditch was there, one reason was for irrigation. The second reason, there's no way for that water, sadly all the farming and areas that had the access to that water was not all used. There was an agreement through north of Eisenhower School that it dumps into the storm sewer at the city. So that was the reason that ditch was along there. In front of those apartments for 5 to 8 years, there were sunflowers and it was a mess. The city approached us. We agreed to forfeit our water rights. That has nothing to do with this client, but it addresses both of their situations. We agreed to forego our water rights. We caved those rights away. We stopped the water, and when the city still could have ran down that ditch. And when the ditch companies abandoned that property, the city did provide for future wastewater in that it goes underneath Lakeview Boulevard and goes to the north and drains into that field, which is owned by the Union Pacific Railroad. So that ditch along that property, especially with the improvements and the widening of Lakeview Boulevard, and they took more ground. One of the widest streets in North Platte is West A. The Hoppy family, that's 80-foot right-of-way in there. And if you looked at, then you went to the right-of-way as you went north on Lakeview Boulevard, it drops down to 50 or 60. That has been widened again, so that's a good thoroughfare. But when you get to the end of Lakeview and face Front Street, there again, you've got I-1, which we're asking for, and the railroad's policy has been, and I can't guarantee that, but their policy has been that they don't sell property. Part of what they kept there as a business sense, I was always told, was that they wanted a buffer so that as we get to residential, that the trains or anything wouldn't be challenged or the noise from that. Which, living in North Platte, you know, after about 3 or 4 nights, you don't even hear that traffic that's out there. But I'm not quite sure, Ms. Kashke's last question, why we didn't go further along front. With that corner, still the ditch is one of the big problems. It's not been abandoned, and it's a quasi-public, private problem that is there. As long as that water is going to be in that ditch and used by agriculture, it's got to remain.
So not having, I think, not having access off of Lakeview would be a problem because you wouldn't be able to access entrance to this off of Front. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, front.
You would have to border Lakeview in order to get access to this
Yes,
property.
and I'm not sure the answer to crossing that ditch. I don't know how that happens and whether it be a culvert or what is there to be done. I do know that the owner of this, or the future owner of this, plans to take care of that ditch if we can. Yet, if we can mow it and keep it down, they want it to be better than the way it looks today. But when you get into ditches and who has responsibility, we always just find if we clean it up, we can't block any of the water flow in that, but if we clean it up, we'll keep cleaning up until they say no. But that does go under Lakeview with the new Lakeview Boulevard extended north, It does go under there, if you'll notice, and it goes across the street and then back across Front Street. And there had been a problem with that flooding and catching that area at the corner of Lakeview and Front on the northwest corner, always had a pooling problem. There was bad, the drainage there was, with the agriculture, was difficult enough. But we think we're gonna, to improve the corner.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Okay, all right, so on my map, then what is running diagonally through, that, is that also an irrigation ditch? Am I showing that?
That's been abandoned,
That has been abandoned,
yes.
so that could be filled in,
I think that's owned by S&T.
okay?
That is an old map, and I think it was part of the problem when this goes back, and I've been around a long time, it goes further back than what I do, but that ditch did go diagonally through there.
Right.
And it cut through this, and it went clear down to, I can remember the ditch, selling ditch property down towards Jeffers. It cut across there.
Okay.
And when that was relocated, or when it was done, I think it was because of the lack of necessity to provide irrigation water on the east side of Lakeview and as you went further into town, further into the community.
Okay.
Emily, one of the things that he's referring to is along Front Street, so if you look at that subdivision, that proposed subdivision along Front Street, you can see, if you have better eyes than I do, that shows the ditch that runs right along Front Street on the south side of Front Street. So to get access, look at the subdivision, item 6 or 5, will show you the subdivision.
This one, Emily, the survey looking
Yep,
one.
the survey looking one.
Okay,
So
so
if
it's
you
not
look-
there.
If you look at it on the north side, just south of Front Street, there's a ditch there, and that's kind of the hang-up of getting access to Front Street, if that helps at all.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else want to testify on this one? Going once. Going twice. Take a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion we close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion by Bain, seconded by Winder to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? If not, would you put up the voting screen, please? And the public hearing is closed. Okay, discussion amongst commission members.
So, if it is rezoned, one thing that I would think that if residential is built around it, lighting might be an issue. What happens in that scenario?
Okay, we do have lighting regulations, so, one of the things that we changed to, and this was, oh gosh, probably a year, 2 years ago, we did change some of our lighting regulations so that, the light doesn't go out like this, the light goes down.
Okay.
Lee can probably give us some more particulars about how that actually would work. We talked about it quite a bit. So we do have some lighting regulations that's going to help, so the glare's not going out, it's going down on businesses, especially those that are in residential areas.
Thank you.
I guess I'm having a little heartburn going to industrial out here. It's in the comprehensive plan to have this be residential, the way that Front Street does curve away from the railroad out there, and I think, it's kind of ripe for housing out there. I can't help but see that. And then with Janice Court also being on the opposite side, I feel like we've already started kind of plotting that area out, and so I don't know, I will say this is kind of a tough decision for me. And I'm probably leaning towards sticking with leaving the comprehensive plan as is.
My view of the whole thing is, with Front Street being a major thoroughfare out there, my thoughts, it would be well planned to put industrial or business on both sides of that road all along there with the residential behind it. So this would play into that buffer from the railroad with the business district, more or less. So, I mean, that's kind of the
Yeah.
opposite view of what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
And I think, like, seeing the idea of extending West Park Drive, you know, I mean, there's,
Right.
some of these
Yeah.
neighborhoods, you're like, it could come off of here and run into a new development. But I know that's up to the
Yeah.
developers and what they wanna do, and apparently might be lakeside,
I agree with Lee, because Front Street is the most inferior part of that development, as if the rest of it would be developed like Janice Court. There's still vacant lots in Janice Court. And that would be the most inferior along Front Street because of the thoroughfare and the ditch and the access. And you're gonna have to come in from Lakeview either way, and I feel it's next to the I-1 on the railroad side. And it would create a buffer for better development over here in the center of the remaining part of that land.
I'm kind of thinking though, you know, there's a difference between having like a B1 on a corner of a residential subdivision than the proposed I-1. Because, you know, I'm just kind of thinking of large residential subdivisions. Typically, you don't see a self-storage unit in there. Those are usually reserved to, like, where we have a lot of them already in town. So I do have some concerns, you know, with that being more industrial than just business. But from a business standpoint, it does make sense that a corner would house some of those normal, just B1 type, you know, businesses. I'm not sure about industrial.
And if you go down the road on Sixth and Bear, there's a storage unit there that creates a barrier from that. And it was there before the residential that was developed, and it creates a fairly good barrier between Sixth and Front from that residential over there. So.
yeah, and that's a ways from this proposed spot
Right,
here, and
but it
feels
is
like
also
that's-
along Front, between Sixth and Front, to where you need that barrier to the new residential, which was developed after the storage units were already there.
Okay, I'm trying to think Sixth and Bear, trying to put that in my
You know
mind.
where Allen Avenue is, right there, where those newer homes?
North
And where they
Allen
built
and
all
North
those
Elder
townhomes
and-
along Bear, facing to the
Oh, okay,
west?
yes,
Yeah, it's that storage facility right to the
Okay.
north of that.
okay.
And actually, that's been a problem, not been a problem to sell any of those properties over there. I've
Okay.
never heard that storage facility mentioned once, and I've been shown properties over there,
Okay,
so,
that's a good example, a good analogy.
yeah.
Right, it does create that barrier, because Front Street is a main thoroughfare to the railroad.
That's why businesses, I think, all the way along there, instead of having residential like that was all planned. I mean, notice how many of those residentials along Front Street further down are becoming businesses. You know,
Right.
They're putting up all.
Further in town.
Further in town,
They're,
yeah.
they're converting to buildings and
Converting
businesses.
Along Front Street.
Right,
But
because that is
that's
the
part of
most,
the mix maybe I wanna avoid, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, then it's not intermixed so much.
and as far as a
I don't think
good
it's
looking
ideal.
storage facility with the fence and the pavement and the landscaping, it's better than external storage. And what could be there. But it is the most inferior for residential along Front Street.
Also, I think the picture that was provided, I mean, this is, you know, nice, this storage facility, if that's kind of the intention. It's very nice. It's not your typical industrial storage, you know, to kind of
The
talk about the
landscaping is
other, yeah, talk, you know, on the other side of it, so.
That's an example of the one down on, East Phillip Avenue, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a nice one, nice looking
Yeah.
one when you drive by.
You know, I don't know if that means, you know, anything can go in there, or it has to be designed.
Well, that would be a separate issue.
Yeah.
I agree, I
Technically-
understand.
Technically, when you do rezone a property to I-1, you are running the risk that you
Yeah.
can put an industrial business in there. Now, I do not believe that that is the intent. I do not believe, you know, but yes, you are running the risk of that. because it's hard to hold somebody's feet to the fire. You told us you were putting this, so when you do rezone it, there is that risk you're running.
Storage units only can be put in ice. Any other discussion? So we had the two public hearings together, but we need to deal with these one at a time. So we would need, if somebody so inclined, you would need to make a motion on item number 3.
I move to approve file number AM 22-006, an amendment to North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Map to amend certain lands from residential medium density, single duplex and multifamily to industrial at 214 North Lakeview Boulevard.
I'll second.
Motion by Jett, seconded by Bain. Any further discussion? Put up the voting screen, please. And the motion passes.
This will go on to the city council meeting on October 4th for final, final decision.
So now we have to deal with item number 4. Well, we've had the public hearing. So there's a motion on item number 4.
I move to approve file number Z22-005 to rezone certain lands from an R1 dwelling district to an I1 light industrial district on property located at 214 North Lakeview Boulevard.
I'll second.
Motion by Winder, seconded by Bain. Any further discussion? Let's vote.
And this again will be on the October 4th city council meeting for final decision.
Item number 5 also deals with the same property. It's file number SU 22-017, discuss and consider action on an application by S&T LLC for Lakeview Country Estates Second Subdivision located at 214 North Lakeview Boulevard on property located on the corner of Lakeview Boulevard and West Front Street and described as part of the southeast quarter of Section 36, Township 14 North, Range 31 West of the 6 Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska. Judy.
This subdivision will create a 4.99 acre lot from an existing parcel. City utilities are available to service the proposed lot. Planning staff has no objection to the approval of Lakeview Country Estates second subdivision. The proposed subdivision does meet current zoning and subdivision regulations. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So help me out here a little bit. So, I mean, we're encouraging the council then, or most people are, to vote for this, but then the subdivision would be set up also with the industrial in mind, like,
This subdivision, so it's currently zoned residential. So
Right.
this subdivision, whether it's residential or industrial, it does meet current regulations. So even if they deny both of those, it really doesn't have a bearing on this. Now, more than likely, what would
Right.
happen is if they would happen to deny both of those, I would guess the applicant would probably pull this.
right, okay.
But it would still meet regulations for a
Sub-
R1 district for that subdivision, yep. You can still
Gosh.
make it as small, you could do one residential lot that size, or you could do
Yeah.
multiple residential lots that size. So it does still fit zoning and subdivision regulations, no matter if it's zoned industrial or residential.
Okay. Okay.
Any more discussion? If not, I think there's a proposed motion there.
I move to approve file SU 22017 for preliminary and final approval of Lakeview Country Estates second subdivision.
Second.
Motion by Bain, seconded by Davies. Any more discussion? Call the vote. And it's approved.
Again, this will, hit the October 4th city council meeting for a final decision.
Thanks for everyone who came and asked questions and provided answers. Okay, item number 6 and number 7 are also related. We're going to do this together as well. We're going to open one public hearing on both of these items. I will read them both into the record, and then we'll get some background on them. So, item number 6 is file number AM 22-005, discuss and consider action on an application by City of North Platte for an amendment to the North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Map, amending property located on the east side of South Buffalo Bill Avenue and south side of West Walker Road from Parks and Recreation to residential medium density, single duplex, and multifamily. The property is described as Lot 1, Doctors Replat, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska. Item number 7 is file number Z 22-004, discuss and consider action on an application by the City of North Platte to rezone certain lands from an A1 transitional agricultural district to a PR1 dwelling district on property located on the east side of South Buffalo Bill Avenue and the south side of West Walker Road, and described as Lot 1, Doctors Replat, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska. Judy.
Okay, and again, as the chairman stated, these two items can be discussed together. They must be acted upon separately. If item 6 is not approved, then item 7 cannot be acted upon and will need to be pulled from the agenda. In order to rezone a property, it's the duty of the Planning Commission to ensure that the rezoning is in conformance with the current comprehensive plan. The request for the amendment has been submitted in conjunction with the rezoning, and the applicants are requesting the amendment to allow the change in zoning. You do have a copy of the current land use map. It shows on your map, it does show green in both of those areas, but the strip to the closest to Buffalo Bill Avenue has already been amended to commercial. So I wrote that on there so that you did know that that was amended to commercial a while back. Planning staff has no objections to the amendment. The area is bordered by agricultural zone property that is currently being used as a combination of residential home sites, a golf course, and agricultural pasture ground. Residential zoning and possible future residential development would not be a detriment to the surrounding area. Again, in order to rezone the property, you do have to be in conformance with the current comprehensive plan. The city is requesting this zone change to allow for future residential development in the area. Housing has been a concern for the community for a number of years. Rezoning this property to a PR1 will allow some flexibility for possible future development of residential lots. The property does have access to a city-improved road and access to city utilities, making this property ready for future development. Planning staff has no objections to the rezoning if the amendment has been approved. Again, the area is bordered by property that is used for residential home sites, a golf course, and agricultural pasture ground. You should see attached to that a copy of the current zoning map that does show that area closest to Buffalo as being commercial, and then the area that is proposed to be rezoned to PR1. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help answer those.
You said there is city utilities to this site?
Yes, so the water runs down Buffalo, all the way down Buffalo from Walker to State Farm. And then the sewer line actually runs from Echo to back to the west. It's that parcel that's identified as 0053667.30. It runs on the south side of that, and then runs on the south side of this larger parcel.
So does it handle that residential district to the south?
I don't believe there's there's any of them that are hooked up to that. I do think they still operate on water and septic. The city engineer is here if you want to ask him specifically.
Just curious, because everything on Walker Road, that's all, because it's not down Walker Road or anywhere.
Not the sewer, the water is. And I would have to go back and see if there was anybody hooked up to water, but I do think most of them are well and septic at this point.
So this is
But the
ready-
option is there.
So this is ready, available to bring in if a developer would come in and there's city and water
Yes,
near.
it's available, so yes, they may have to extend it a little bit, but it is right there, ready to go.
Extend it through down like Walker or just into there?
It's really gonna depend on how they, plan that area, how they end up with the roads and the streets, cause we like to be either in road right away or alley right away, so it would really depend on that.
So only water goes down Buffalo,
Water goes down Buffalo, yes.
and the sewer's to Echo, not west of Echo?
It is west of Echo on the south side of this larger parcel,
Okay.
The one that they're adding in, that's a part of this
yes,
proposal?
yes.
Okey dokey, this is a public hearing. The commission does again value your input, would like to hear from you. If you'd like to speak, please be recognized by the chair. Once recognized, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and keep your comments, if you can, as short as possible. Repetitive and excessively long testimony may be ended at the discretion of the chair. Yes, sir. State your name again, please, sir. I'm sorry.
My name is Delane Wyckoff. I reside at 403 South Maloney Drive. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I come to you with concerns about the planned use of this parcel. I was a member of the doctor's replot, former owners of this parcel when there was a transaction between our group to pass ownership of this land to the city in exchange for land that we acquired that was formerly part of Centennial Park. For those of you not familiar, that is the ground south of Leota Street across from the hospital, which is now occupied by various professional buildings and formerly Centennial Park Retirement Village. That transaction was led by a series of very complex negotiations headed up by Dr. Charles Betcher, and he has more personal familiarity with all that transpired. This was back in the 80s. In order for this transaction to take place, the doctors group was not permitted to purchase this land from the city because that land had originally been acquired through federal funding administered through the Department of Interior and passed through the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission to allow the city of North Platte to acquire the property. In conjunction with that original grant to the city, it is my understanding that it carried a requirement that that land was perpetually dedicated to use for parks and recreation. Therefore, in order for us to accomplish the transaction and acquire that land, we were required to offer in exchange a parcel of land which was larger and more valuable than the land which we would acquire. That is the land that you are now considering, and it was our understanding that those same restrictions on future use would apply to that land because it was in exchange for parkland that we acquired. I have talked with Mayor Kelleher. I've talked with City Attorney Terry Waite. It is my understanding that to date, they aren't aware that there are any such restrictions, but I will let them speak to that. It would be my concern that there has not been adequate research or background checks performed on what is actually allowed for future use of this land. This is supported by distinct recollections from Dr. Betcher during the time that this transaction was being negotiated. And there were actually pieces of the land that's out south on the east side of Buffalo that were carved out and made available for future streets and made available for a possible fire department or something like that, that would have uses needed by the city, but not specifically parks and recreation. So I think there's pretty strong personal recollection and evidence that the city may be putting itself in jeopardy by moving forth with this change in use unless they can prove that there is no concern from Nebraska Game and Parks or the Department of Interior going back to those original restrictions that were on the land that applied before this exchange took place. I would also suggest that in researching this, that looking for a title search on this land solely by itself might not be adequate to reveal that. It would be nice if there were notes that had been added to that title in the county records. Apparently, those were not. It might have been an oversight, or they may have been lost. But I think there's pretty strong information that this land is not as available as may be thought up to this point. And I would strongly encourage the Planning Commission to table this until they can determine with greater certainty that there are not any potential liabilities that would be forthcoming by violating restrictions that may be pertinent to this property.
Any questions for Mr. Wyckoff? Thank you, sir. I cut off the mayor on his way to the podium to let you up, so I'm going to let him come up next.
Hello everyone, Brandon Keller here. I'm the mayor of North Platte. My residence is 3801 Sugarberry Court. Let me just say, Dr. Wyckoff and I have been friends for years, and as far as I know, everything he said is exactly accurate. However, there is one thing. The stipulations that he spoke to have not been memorialized in a deed or a plat. Nowhere. I've read them myself. I've had two separate attorneys read them to make sure that my non-attorney brain was missing something. It's not memorialized in a plat. In the course of the research about what could be done with this land, the city attorney, Mr. Waite, reached out to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission and said, do you have a copy of this contract? Because we were unable to find one here at the city of North Platte. They were unable to produce one. And this was about 9 months ago. Well, excuse me, it's about 15 months ago this conversation occurred. So I would say if anyone can produce any documents to that effect, please bring them forward, because we certainly don't want to do a misstep and create a problem for the city of North Platte going forward. That being said, let me talk just a second about the economics of park development. So there's a considerable chunk of land out there. I assume all of you have driven by it. And it's not quite as big as Cody Park, but it's similar in size if you were to take the entire area and put it together. As you think about this, I don't see a situation in North Platte where the city is very likely to put the money in to develop a park that's as big as Cody Park in that vicinity anytime soon. Now, it's impossible to predict the future, and it could happen going forward. But what's planned out there, or tentatively planned out there, is a housing development that brings to town a developer as well as a contractor, and a contractor capable of building 10 houses or so at a time. And I don't have to tell any of you that we're short on houses and we need more houses. I'm not going to belabor that point. But these are houses that would be valued in the vicinity of $350,000 or more. And the idea behind this plan is that if we can build new houses, we will have people who live in North Platte today move out to those new houses. Their houses will open up. People who live in other places will buy them. And there'll be sort of a chain reaction to create some workforce housing in our community that anyone can buy. Now, I realize that that's a plan that's based a little bit on speculation. But what plan isn't, honestly? And when you think about it, to build a $125,000 house today would be about the size of this room. I'm not kidding. That would be about the size of this room. And it wouldn't have a garage. And anyway, we can debate housing prices for a long time. But that is the general idea behind this plan. So just remember, 2 different attorneys' firms have looked at this, the city attorney and one other. They're unable to find anything memorialized. I don't doubt about the facts that Dr. Wyckoff spoke of. I'm sure at the time that was very true. However, at this point, nothing can be found in legal documentation as a requirement, and the state has been consulted. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to come back and answer them when we're done. Thank you.
Questions for the mayor? Thank you, sir. Back in the corner.
I'm Charles Betcher, 4801 South Range Road. And that was the agreement that was made, and because somebody didn't record it, doesn't mean you can just, that was the whole idea, was they could take this land and then it was equal value and greater size was required, greater size and greater value. And for this, now, back then they decided they wanted that out there so that they could have future park. And now, because somebody didn't record it, doesn't mean it shouldn't just get washed away.
Any questions for Dr. Betcher? Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Gary Pearson, President of North Platte Area Chamber Development Corporation, 502 South Dewey. Yeah, I've been to the Planning Commission numerous times and preached the housing gospel and why all the virtues of why we need it. We strongly support what the city of North Platte is proposing to do here. The fact that if this land was designated for parks and hasn't developed in 40 years, that's evidence enough that, you know, there are probably better uses that can be established there. And it's a natural growth area. And one of the, you know, when you look at North Platte, there are limitations in different directions that you could go with the boundary of North Platte. So it does make a lot of sense. I've been privy to the conversations for months and months that have gone on with a potential development out there. And it's a development the community will be very, very proud of if all the pieces of the puzzle come together. And it's very, very much needed. We all know about the jobs that are coming, the potential growth potential of North Platte has finally arrived after you could make an argument 40 years of being pretty stagnant or status quo. And we have a wonderful opportunity to grow, but it will not happen without housing, of all kinds of housing. So we strongly support what the city is proposing to do.
Questions for Mr. Pearson? Sir?
Brandon Kelleher, Mayor of North Platte. I failed to mention one thing. The planned use of this area includes approximately 10 acres of park, bike trails, some sort of jungle gym sort of thing for kids to play on, soccer field, something along that, in about 10 acres of this land.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What was that?
How many acres are in this total?
96?
Come on up.
Fred Savoya, 2502 West Walker Road, corner of Buffalo and Walker, right across the street from where I live. Gary made a statement that for 40 years we haven't had any growth. We definitely have not had any growth. We're starting to see some growth and it's good. I understand that you want to have some places for homes to be built. I also understand that there's a question on whether this land was dedicated for parks and recreation. I do believe in my time living here in North Platte, Nebraska, that there was articles in the paper regarding this. So there's probably some documentation somewhere. Let's take a moment and check to make sure that we're not going in the wrong direction. I understand you want to build some houses. We need houses, and from what I understand, the houses are going to be fairly substantial. They're going to be like 3-bedroom houses with garages and some property with lawns, and going to have sewer, going to have streets, going to have lighting of streets, going to have water service, a lot of things. But let's make sure we're doing it right. We don't need to do it wrong. So therefore, look at the papers. There's probably some history in the Telegraph regarding what took place and why it was done. I do remember that the property was swapped so they could build some properties along the south of the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Ty Lucas of 3510 Tyler Court. I'm happy that we have people in the audience tonight who remember the history of the property. It's an important item. It's like what the mayor said about the property and the project. It would be standard procedure for somebody who would purchase a property like this or finance a property like this to purchase title insurance. At that point in time, especially in a larger transaction like this, a title, most title insurance is done by one of a handful of very large underwriting companies. They would be responsible to review the information on the title of the property and make a judgment whether a clean title insurance policy could be issued to somebody who would purchase the land or then somebody who would also purchase eventual houses. Occasionally somebody purchases property without title insurance, but anything that is financed through a traditional bank financing, and in general, the vast majority of people who purchase property would require clean title insurance. And so I really don't have enough information and the ability to make a judgment on the title of this property, but my point is that professionals that do would have to make that judgment and incur the liability of insuring that title to issue proper title insurance to any succeeding purchasers of the property. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Lucas? Thank you. Anybody else?
Howdy,
Name
folks.
and address, sir.
Paul Ottinger, 804 Cedarberry Road.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just have a point of order question. When I was researching and just looking at the uses in the comprehensive plan, I didn't see this as a use in there. Residential, medium density, single duplex, and multifamily. I looked at the 2020 version, because didn't we just revise all the land uses?
Comprehensive plan?
Yeah, in the comprehensive, it has 14 land uses.
Yes.
I didn't see that one.
Residential is a land use. It's on the land use map, and it is in there in a residential district that is in the comprehensive plan. I don't know if I have one here. Yeah, all I have is the zoning in front of me, but yes, multifamily residential is in the comp plan, and it is on the land use map, and you all have a copy of that page of the land.
Oh, I just saw low density, low to medium density, medium high density. Those are the only three I see, but none of them have this title.
That's what the title is on the map, so it does go with both of those land uses can be in this map area in the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so you're saying this is in the comprehensive plan?
Yes, guarantee you it is in the comprehensive plan, the low, medium density, because on that, land use map, let's see if I can find it. The map key does call out a residential medium density, single, duplex, and multifamily in that orange color on the land use map. So if you go back and you look at the comprehensive plan and the uses, you said there is one that's single family, there is one that's duplex or multifamily. So that is on the map. It's combined all of them in one color on the map. So yes. Come in my office and I'll show
Okay,
it to you.
perfect. That'll work for me.
Yep.
Thanks. I would like to say that, just, we obviously need housing. I would have loved if this would have been developed as a park and recreation in the past, but it obviously hasn't. The next best use of this land is going to be a housing development.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I'll, come on up.
Fred Burke, 3365 Parker Road. I am vehemently opposed to this being anything but a park. The integrity of the two gentlemen over there shouldn't be questioned, in my opinion. Now, we've talked about housing, but there's an awful lot of private property that's around this that doesn't have houses on it yet. Why are we getting in such a hurry to just give away what was a man of great integrity wanted for the community? Also, this property has a unique ability to have a trout lake on it. Did you know that? There's trout living in Fremont Slough. We got a trout hatchery right over here. Most of the ground is not going to be able to be used unless it's come up to grade. The Oregon Trail scooted around there to Walker Road. So, and then the other part of it is flood. If we do have a flood event, it's in a floodplain. Did you know? You didn't know that? It's also once a year you have a meeting of if in the unlikely event that the dam breaks. NPPD, that area is a floodplain by them. So some of this stuff, and I just don't understand the hurry to hurry up and use public land for housing. Just doesn't make any sense, especially when I know about the property because I wrote an article in the paper wanting to keep the ground over by the hospital. We give away quite a bit as far as the integrity of the town to have this piece of property. And just because some people didn't write down the right words, that shouldn't be the last word on this. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Burke? Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else? If not, I'll bring Mr. Wyckoff back up.
Thank you, Delane Wyckoff again. I would just raise the question, how would it be possible to do a transaction today to redesignate a portion of Centennial Park for private development? What hoops would be required to be jumped through in order for that transaction to take place? Based on my knowledge of the history behind this property, all of those restrictions would apply to this land as well because it was exchanged for equivalent property under that understanding. If there are Department of Interior restrictions on Centennial Park, I would not be at all surprised if the Department of Interior wants to have some say-so about this land. That's all.
Any questions for Mr. Wyckoff? Okey doke. Anybody else? I want to be clear, once we close the public hearing, the discussion stays up here, okay? Going once. Going twice. Take a motion.
I moved to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing by Winder, seconded by Jet. Any discussion about that? Call the vote. And the public hearing is closed. Okay, all the conversation will remain up here at this point. So we are specifically on item number 6. Commissioners? Questions, comments, concerns?
Is that AM 22005?
Yes, sir. Lot
The
to-
amended to commercial in 2020, is that the quick stop?
The upper portion of that is Quick Stop, but then there is a strip that runs south that you can see that kind of bootlegs out, that
Okay.
was all completed at the same time, yes.
Kind of give it a frontage business area.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
So the whole angle portion is commercial.
The whole angle portion is commercial, yep.
Would it be uncommon? I mean, do you guys deal in title stuff at all?
No.
Then I won't ask the question.
We could ask Ty.
I'm a banker. What question do you have? Yeah.
But would it be uncommon for a detail like that to be left out of a,
Typically, you get, not only with your title commitment, you get all of the warranty deed information included in that. So it's researched pretty good.
And if there's a restriction, it would be a deed restriction filed on a deed when it transferred. As perpetual, runs with the land all the time on a deed. So I don't know who we would contact at the Department of Interior, if they would know, but if it was in a contract, it should have been placed on a deed as a deed restriction that this is limited use to this.
and those would be registered at the county courthouse, wouldn't they?
On the deed that transferred the land from the doctors wherever it transferred last time. Or
And-
that time, I should say, not last time.
And to my knowledge, that was researched fairly well by the city attorney and then an additional attorney. And one of them, if not both of them, did contact the Nebraska Game and Parks, which is where any of that grant funding would have came from. And they didn't find anything. That's, at least to my
So the
knowledge,
funding came from the state.
from the state. It was probably federal funding. Usually the feds give the money to the state. The
So
state
much these-
disperses it, yes. But they should have had documentation as to
And
what
if-
occurred.
Right. And if there was a restriction for use of land, it should have been printed on a deed as a deed restriction to be perpetual with that land.
And again, this possible proposal does show an area that's probably approximately 10 acres. And it would be right along that slough area, which if you look on the rezoning map that you have, it's where that B2 kind of comes down, starts at a bootleg, and you'll see an orange line running kind of diagonally across that property. There's about 10 acres of property in there that's kind of undevelopable. Because you
Right
do have
along
that,
Fremont Slough.
that slough running through there, yeah. And so what's proposed there is some park type stuff, bike trails, maybe a soccer field or something like that. So having at least a portion of this as a park is definitely not off the table.
I just don't see the whole 90 acres becoming a park ever. I mean, I would agree that, it's been there for so long. I completely understand where you guys are coming from, and I'm torn between that too, because, if that's what it was, and it's near and dear to their heart about this needs to be that. On the other hand, I mean, there is plenty of land out there, but it's not city-owned land where we can develop it easily, which this is more easily developed. And I, as much as I'd want a huge soccer park like York has, or a big softball complex, it's just not gonna happen here anytime soon. And if it does, there's land that can come up with that.
Yeah, I don't feel a park would be totally feasible on 90 acres.
I don't either. And I think that we need to have something come up, and this is a good viable reason.
I kind of agree with what you're saying, Lee. I struggle with this too. I had people contact me about this, and we've talked about this property before. Quick Stop, I think, was the last time in 2020, and that's when this was brought up once again. So this is definitely delicate. I don't want to speak for everybody on the commission, but I know myself certainly, and I would venture to say my colleagues don't question anybody's integrity with this, and definitely admire the passion that's involved with this project. But a big deciding factor for me, again, is that currently, like Mayor Kelleher said and like Judy said, there's plans to be park included on this housing development. And 90 acres is quite the park.
Well, and 10% of it, that's a pretty good.
Yeah,
percent.
it's still gonna be some parkland there used, and,
Over 10%, you don't get that a lot.
yeah. And what's our biggest need in this community right now? It's housing. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but.
Comments from the other comments from the commissioners? Concerns? Complaints? See Judy. If not, we would need to take action on item 6 first. As Tristan pointed out, that's AM 22005.
I move to approve file number AM 22-005, an amendment to North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Map to amend certain lands from parks and recreation to residential medium-density single duplex and multifamily located on the east side of South Buffalo Bill Avenue and south side of West Walker Road.
I'll second.
Motion by Whirl, seconded by Bain. Any more discussion? Call the vote.
Again, this will go to the October 4th City Council meeting for final decision.
So now you'd need to deal with item number 7, which is Z22-004. Any discussion on this?
Judy, can you just, PR1, just explain that just a little bit?
Okay. A PR1, the P stands for a planned unit development. So what a PR1 does is all of the regulations that are in a residential R1 district go with this property. The P stands for planned unit development, which allows the developer an opportunity to vary from those regulations up to 20% of the area can vary for something. Say for example, in an R1 district, you have to have, all of the lots have to be a minimum of 7,500 square feet. On some of those residential lots, if they wanted to, they could make those smaller. Up to 20% of them could be smaller sized lots. So that's an example of how it could vary a little bit from a R1 district. So that gives the developer just a little bit of flexibility to vary from those hard R1 district regulations. Is that?
Other questions? Not, I think there's a proposed motion down there.
I move to approve file number Z22-004 to rezone certain lands from an A1 transitional agricultural district to a 1 Planning Dwelling District on the east side of South Buffalo Bill Avenue and south side of West Walker Road.
Second.
Motion by Whirl, seconded by Winder. Any more discussion? Call the vote. And the motion passes. Thanks for everybody coming out. Appreciate that.
Again, that'll be on the October 4th agenda, sorry, city council agenda for final decision.
On to item number 8, discuss and consider action on annexation into the corporate limits of the city of North Platte, parcel ID number 0053677.30, 0054621.20, 0054326.02, and 0054326.00 as surveyed, platted, and recorded in the Lincoln County Register of Deeds, describing boundaries of lands proposed for annexation as follows. Lot 1 and Lot 2, Buffalo Administrative Subdivision, Lincoln County, Nebraska, including abutting South Buffalo Avenue and West Walker Road, and Lot 1, Doctors Replat, Lincoln County, Nebraska, including abutting South Buffalo Bill Avenue, West Walker Road, and the southeast quarter, northwest quarter, Section 17, Township 13, North Range 30 West, and the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska, including abutting South Echo Drive. Judy.
Okay, and you should have all received a copy of the review comments. This annexation has been requested by the property owners that include the City of North Platte, KSAP Inc., and Bruce and Debbie Majors. Letters requesting the annexation are attached for your review. Planning staff has no objection to the proposed annexations. The annexations meet the requirement in Nebraska state statute and will be a benefit to the City of North Platte's future growth and development. Water and sewer services to the area currently exist. Property within city limits have easier access to different types of funding opportunities, making annexation of this area a win for future development. This is a little different than the last annexation we did, as the individual who are the property owners did request it, so we don't have to go through the big study like we did with the airport annexation.
Questions, discussion before we open the public hearing? All right, this is a public hearing. All the same rules apply. And the public hearing is open. If anybody would like to discuss this, come on up. Everybody's quiet. Come on up.
Gary Pearson, President, North Platte Area Chamber Development Corporation, 502 South Dewey. We're on record in support the growth of North Platte, and certainly one of the ways community has the ability to grow is to annex areas. If you look at the footprint of North Platte, everything off of Front Street was annexed at one time or another when development seemed the right time to do it. And in fact, cities should always look at annexation or surrounding adjacent properties. That's why you have that buffer zone and zoning, so zoning is done properly so the day comes when it can be annexed. It's done in proper fashion. And when outlying areas ask for city services, one of the things that should always go with that is annexation. And I think historically in North Platte, there's been a lot of latitude given to outlying properties that were afforded the ability to have utility services without being annexed. But I think that day and age has come where, you know, this is a good practice. It's a much necessary practice. And certainly any new developments out in that area you would want to capture within the incorporated city limits. As Judy spoke to it, it does afford you other development practices that developers are looking for and will not come without it. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Gary? Anybody else on this one? Going once, going twice.
I move to close the public hearing.
Moved by Winder, seconded by Jett to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that? Not, please call the vote. Public hearing is closed. Okay, discussion up here on this one.
So this is connected over on Echo, is that where it's connected?
Yeah,
extending
right
it?
on the Majors property, it's right on the upper northeast corner is where the ending of city limits is.
Just barely kind of
Yep,
hooks right there.
yep.
It's a little off on the map, but
Yeah, it is a little off on the map, but that corner does connect.
that goes clear to the corner.
Yes.
So I'm assuming those extra numbers were the numbers of the two properties that are the business districts along Buffalo.
That is correct.
Any other questions, discussion?
I just think it's a good fit.
Yep.
It's all unimproved, that helps.
Okay.
I move to make a recommendation to accept the request to annex parcel ID numbers 00536667.30, 00546221.20, 00543226.02, and 00543226.00 as surveyed, platted, and recorded by the Lincoln County Register of Deeds into the corporate limits of the city of North Platte.
Second.
Motion by Jett, seconded by Winder. Any more discussion? Not, call the vote. And the motion passes.
Okay, and this again will also be on the city council's agenda for October 4th for decision, for final decision.
Item number 9. Why do these keep getting longer? Discuss and consider action on a resolution regarding the City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, North Platte Southwest Study Area, presented by Marvin Planning Consultants, Inc. The purpose of this hearing is to obtain public comment on whether the real estate described in this notice should be declared substandard and blighted pursuant to the Nebraska Community Development Law for Planning Commission to forward a recommendation on the study to the to the North Platte City Council. The proposed City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study. The North Platte Southwest Study Area includes an estimated 296 acres located along and south of West Eugene Avenue, along and east of South Buffalo Bill Avenue to east of Echo Drive, including the eastern property line of a lot referred to as part of the northwest quarter, northeast quarter of Section 17, Township 13 North, Range 30 west of the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and south to the southerner property line of a lot described as the southeast quarter, northwest quarter of Section 17, Township 13 North, Range 30 west of the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska. Judy.
Okay, and you should have all received a copy of the blight and substandard study. Attached to that is also a copy of the rules and regulations when it comes to Nebraska Community Development Law. The City Planning Commission's responsibility in this blight and substandard determination process is to take public comment on whether the real estate described should be declared blighted and substandard pursuant to the Nebraska Community Development Law, and if the study is in conformance with the City of North Platte Comprehensive Plan. The following statements should be considered. The property as presented in the study meets the requirements to be declared blighted and substandard. This property is presented in the study, as presented in the study, meets the requirements to be declared blighted. The factors necessary to declare the property blighted and substandard are sufficiently distributed to impact the development across the entire site. That development of this property to its fullest potential is in the best interest of the City of North Platte and the entire region, and that there are projects ready to develop in this area if they can meet the financial goals of the developers. The City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, North Platte Southwest Study Area, prepared by Marvin Planning Consultants, was on the September 6, 2022 City Council agenda and referred to the City Planning Commission for review with no comment. State statute 18-21033 regulates the percentage of city limits that may be declared blighted and substandard pursuant to Nebraska Community Development Law. and states a city of the first class shall not designate more than 35% of the city as blighted. Currently, the city limits of the city of North Platte contain 11,330.13 acres, with 2,385.83 acres designated as blighted and substandard, or 21.1%. The proposed study will designate an additional 296 acres as blighted and substandard, which would increase the city's percentage to approximately 23.7. A copy of the study, which includes the comprehensive plan, is attached also. Planning staff recommends approval of the study and passage of the attached resolution. The study is in conformance with the North Platte, Nebraska Comprehensive Plan and meets the requirements to be declared blighted and substandard. And by declaring this area as blight and substandard, the city will remain below the 35% threshold, leaving areas available for future blight and substandard declarations. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
This is a public hearing. All the previously discussed rules still apply. And with that, I'll open the public hearing. If anybody'd like to testify, come on up.
Gary Pearson, President, North Platte Area Chamber Development Corporation, 502 South Dewey, to be consistent in our support for housing and in visiting with housing developers, trying to entice them to North Platte. As you're well aware, we've had 6 entire single-family housing permits filed for the entire construction year of 2022, which is embarrassingly low for a community this size. That's how challenging it is to find developers. We've had the good fortune to meet with a number of them recently, but the first words out of their mouth is unless there's redevelopment assistance for infrastructure, we just simply can't afford to be there. And they'll go to communities that do offer that assistance. So they'll bring forth a good plan. It'll help keep the cost of the housing down for the end user, and that's the key. It gets closer and closer to those workforce affordability factors, and so it's a very, very necessary tool in today's development world. So we strongly support the findings of the study.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Any questions for Mr. Pearson? Anybody else? Going once, going twice.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Motion by Bain, seconded by Davies to close the public hearing. Call the vote, please. Sorry, I shouldn't go so fast. And the public hearing is closed. Discussion amongst the commissioners.
Of that 21.1%, I mean, I feel we're plenty below. But do you have any information regarding of how much of that is gonna come out of the blight and substandard because of development?
Is going to come out?
Yeah, anytime soon?
You know, we've talked about that a lot, about undesignating some of the areas. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which ones we would decide to do, but yeah, there's definitely something that we should be looking into, and I guess
That's what I was
that's me.
wondering, yeah.
I should be looking into doing that. Because you look at things like the Walmart DC. That's a large area that could definitely come out of that designation. Possibly the, Holiday Inn Express area could possibly come out of that designation, and there's a number of those. So, yeah, that is definitely something that city staff should probably be taking a look at.
Yeah, cause maybe in 5 or 10 years, we're gonna be pushing that.
Yep.
And I think this is a valuable tool to bring developers in, and that we need to use it to the best that we can. I think that's what this is for. So I'm definitely for this.
The tool's in the toolbox, everybody else has access to the toolbox, so.
Yeah.
Pretty simple to me, I agree, Lee.
I feel it's a good fit for this area.
I agree.
I move to approve the resolution and recommend adoption of the City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, North Platte Southwest Study Area, prepared by Marvin Planning Consultants Incorporated and approved of related actions.
Second.
Motion by Davies, seconded by Jet.
I beat you to it.
Laughing as he turned the page.
Any other discussion?
Gotta make sure.
You're like, oh no.
Call the vote, please. And the motion passes. Okey dokey, where are we at? Old business, any old business for the good of the order? Any new business for the good of the order?
Should we be back on schedule next month, Judy?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yes,
Because I'm gonna feel like we're a day ahead the rest of this week.
I know, no, I do believe that we should be
I know, me
regularly
too.
scheduled, yes.
Just for the record, I will be gone during the October meeting, Mr. Jet, so you're
I will
on.
make sure to plan a trip, Mr. Fudge.
Perfect.
Who falls after that? You?
Mr. Weber, isn't he? He's a senior
The
member.
senior sawbones,
At that point, we have to vote somebody who is in attendance as acting chair.
temporary.
We can do
It'll
that
be-
now since you're here, Lee.
We'll deal with that if it comes to it.
That'll be the 18th, right?
It'd be the
most likely?
25th.
25th.
If it was the 18th, I'd be here. So, all right. Anything else? We are adjourned.
Can you sign that for me?
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks, Nelson. I'm gonna be in South Sioux City.